Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here, and thanks everyone for being here in the audience, and to everyone who's watching us through the interwebs today, so to speak. Today, I'm going to talk about how we can use the energy sector to create a more sustainable city. The company I work for, Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, I have a lot of pride in this company, but I must admit the name is a bit of a misnomer. We are not a hedge fund. We are not a private equity fund that invests in energy. We are a non-profit, mission-driven company that works at the intersection of clean energy, environmental protection, and social justice. And we think of the energy sector as an investment. And that's where the name comes from. And yes, as the name suggests, we are headquartered and we originated from the state of Vermont, the same state that gives us Bernie Sanders, maple syrup, and not too many greenhouse gas emissions, which is a good thing. And that is the title of my presentation. And we've been in the business for about 3 decades now. So before I start talking about what it is that we do, as Gary mentioned in the introduction, my role is as the Financing Strategies Director is to design, develop, and implement innovative financing products and mechanisms for energy efficient, renewable energy. But that is not what I'm here to talk about today. What I'm here to talk about is the work that we've done across the US that helps make cities and states more sustainable in the energy sector. And before I get into nuts and bolts of what it is we actually do, I'd like you to think of the utility that's currently serving you in your office, in your residence, and I'm going to list out a few points and try to make a connection between that utility and whether it represents the value on the screen. Does it align with the environmental goals of your city? Does it focus exclusively or even prioritizes energy efficiency and renewable energy? Does it catalyze underserved markets like small businesses, low-income multifamily housing, community shelters, etc.? Does it help reduce social inequity? Does it create green jobs and provide workforce development? Does it support local businesses? Well, if you can't make a connection, then you're not the only person in the room or in the world. The utility structure, and to their credit, were not created. Traditional utilities were not created to hit these goals. They were constructed and they were developed in an era where energy access was the #1 priority. But these points are what our vision for a sustainable energy utility is. Oh, and it's also involved in creating a sustainable energy future. Not only do we hit these goals, but we constantly work with the cities we serve in to push the envelope, to actually have planned obsolescence in what we are doing so that we are always at the cutting edge. That is our vision. And what I want you to take away from this presentation is that what we are doing is not the gold standard. That is not the idea. But what I'd like to take away is that there are ways we can tap into the energy sector to make a more sustainable city. Traditionally, environmentalists and think tanks have view energy sectors with trepidation because they have been the major source of greenhouse emissions and other pollutants. But the same sector can be harnessed to make a much more sustainable city in a few ways. And the nuts and bolts of how you do that is what we'll talk about today when we talk about the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, one of the business units of the EIC. And to show that, we'll play a little video we've made to show how we impact the city.
The DCSEU is leading the way as one of the country's top sustainable energy utilities. It's no surprise that we're protecting the environment and making energy work more efficiently for DC residents. What you might not have guessed is that the DCSEU's $18 million investment in energy efficiency improvements will result in more than $100 million in lifetime savings for district residents and businesses. How does one bright idea shed light and prosperity over an entire city? This year alone, working with over 50 district retailers, DC residents purchased more than 400,000 DCSEU reduced-priced energy-efficient light bulbs. Using just one of these bulbs, instead of a traditional incandescent bulb, saves consumers on average about $5 a year. $5. That's more than enough to say, take a ride on the DC Metro. But if you take those $5 and multiply by all the light bulbs installed in all the houses in DC, that's more than $2 million in savings. And that, well, that's more than just a trip on the Metro. With that, you could ride the red line back and forth from end to end over 300,000 times. And over 90,000 of those light bulbs were LEDs, which last 25 times longer than incandescent bulbs. That's at least 1 million bulbs that won't be sent to a landfill. That's enough to fill 82 DC metro cars. A simple innovation, a bright idea that helps a city shine. A city is made up of many different parts. The DCSEU helps connect them together, making each part and the entire city work more efficiently and sustainably. But it's much more than that. It helps income-qualified families lower their energy costs. Our $6 million investment in low-income communities will produce $12 million in lifetime energy savings. It helps businesses cut energy costs and increase profits. Our work will produce over $5.5 million in electricity and gas savings for DC businesses. That's enough to employ 200 people at a living wage for an entire year. We put hundreds of district residents to work this year by investing $4 million in district contractors. That's hundreds of people working towards achieving the district's goal of being the most sustainable city in the country by 2032. And that's a goal that will benefit everyone, helping to support services and systems that benefit us all. The DCSEU isn't a traditional utility. It's a new utility that's building a brighter, more sustainable future for the District of Columbia.
So this video should have given you a fair idea of how we create value for the city. And now let me tell you how we actually do it on a day-to-day basis. But before we get there, why is DCSU structured the way it is? Well, our concept for a sustainable energy utility, like I said in the outset, is a structure that adjusts itself to the context of the city. Now, DC has no industrial energy use. It has a mostly functioning public transit system. It is, sorry, I mean, who's not frustrated recently, right? I'm not the only one. And one of the other things that are peculiar about the city. Though it's a city, it has lots of deep ties with the larger metro area. So it's a city of about 650,000 people. But on a work day, it can swell up as high as 1 million people in it. So the infrastructure is not just great for the people in it, but for the larger metro area. It's a building where really high-end real estate coexists with old building stock. So in terms of building energy efficiency, there's a huge spectrum of usage. There's wide income inequality, and as you can see from that map, and that's divided DC into different wards. There's Ward 2, I believe, or Ward 4. Ward 2 has 2.9% unemployment, while Ward 7 and Ward 8 have unemployment levels that are seen in Albania and Armenia, respectively. So this is a couple of countries in the city right now. There's a high degree of environmental stewardship. As it was mentioned in the video, DC has a sustainable DC plan that by 2032 has some really ambitious goals, one of them being to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and energy usage by 50%. And the local administration is really focused on creating pathways to middle class. There have been many studies that demonstrate the linkage between low income and between poverty and crime and health. And the pathways to middle class hopes to break through this vicious cycle and create a more sustainable and economically resilient city. So how do you go about forming an SEU? Well, this is what DC did. They first passed an act called the Clean and Affordable Energy Act of 2008, passed by the local council, which had the renewable portfolio standard embedded in it. It had the creation of the sustainable energy utility in it. The SEU is funded by something called the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund. Every ratepayer in DC on the utility bill, whether it's electricity or natural gas, has a small surcharge, and all of this gets pooled into a fund called the SETF, which funds the DCSEU. It has an advisory board that is made of multiple stakeholders, including the two utilities, the distribution utilities that serve DC, which is TEPCO, or now Exelon, and Washington Gas. Our client is the District Department of the Environment, now known as Environment and Energy, DOEE. The contracts which is what the SEU is. The SEU is a performance contract. So again, a misnomer that we are dealing with. It is not a traditional utility. It is not a big generating unit with poles and wires coming out of it. It is a contract that was bid out through a request for proposal process and won by DEIC in 2010, and operation started in 2011. And what does the performance contract looks like? Oh, did I totally forget? Right. And what does the performance contract look like? Well, the performance contract has about 6 goals. We have to create a minimum level of electricity savings every year, natural gas savings. We have to create certain number of green jobs every year. So these are sort of and we have to increase the renewable energy capacity in the city. These are the external goals. Internally, with the money that we get, which is about $18.5 million every year, we have to spend a certain amount on local businesses and a certain amount on low-income housing. So you can see how some of these goals don't really work with each other congruently. So it's a balancing act that the SEU has to perform year after year. And it's like a complex optimization problem, which has many moving parts to it, and we have some really smart people working on that part, not me, it's my coworkers, and they've done a tremendous job because it's a very complicated contract, never been done before anywhere in the US, and we actually met all our performance contract goals for the first time in 2015. So what does the SEU actually look like? And like I said, we are not the traditional utility. And you'd probably be surprised to know it is actually nothing but 50 people working, whether it's employees or contractors, that form these teams. We have the engineering team, which obviously has the energy efficiency and renewable energy engineers. We have account managers for large energy users. So DC Water has an account manager, for instance. WMATA has an account manager. Large universities have account managers. We have program managers that work on like retail sort of programs that are not client specific. We have people who do the monitoring and the measurement and verification. We have people in the financial leverage department, which is me. We have a team that works on workforce development. So we actually go out and we train young graduates on how they can have careers in sustainable energy. We have community outreach specialists, marketing, finance, and admin, which are more of the on the overhead side of things. So how do we deliver value to the city? Well, we create retail level discounts in shops for energy efficiency equipment. So what you pay for an LED bulb right now would have been twice or in some cases thrice of what you pay if it weren't for the discounts we help create in the shops. We provide technical assistance with our engineers to anyone who's interested, whether it's residential or multifamily or commercial. If you have plans for energy efficiency upgrade, we come and help you design in some cases, but definitely help you figure out what contractors, what technology, et cetera, makes most sense for your energy usage patterns. We provide incentives, cash subsidies, and our cash subsidies are linked to the amount of savings you create. So if you're going more ambitious so if you're replacing a boiler that runs at 60% efficiency with one at 80%, you'll get a certain amount. But if you go up to 95% efficiency, you'll get a larger amount. That way, we are helping transform the market towards higher efficiency equipment. We provide catalytic financial solutions. So the idea is that the SEU doesn't exist to crowd out what's working well already. It is created in the context of a city to help correct the mistakes of the market. So if my contractors, if the banks in DC are ignoring small to medium enterprises, are ignoring community shelters, it becomes my job to create financial solutions that helps unlock these financing flows into the underserved and hard to reach markets. So the idea, again, is not to crowd out what's working well, but only so it's like a jigsaw puzzle. We are the missing piece in what it needs to create a sustainable city. And finally, awareness and education, which is absolutely necessary when it comes to changing consumer behavior. These are some of the highlights of what our impact looks like. We had the largest affordable solar program on the East Coast last year, where we installed 137 solar PV installations on low-income housing only, single-family low-income housing. We created all those number of job hours. That's how much energy we saved to power 6,800 homes, which is significant in a city of this population. And for about 18.6 million that we invested, we created a lifetime savings of 92.6. So you can see the leverage that can be achieved by investing in a sustainable energy utility. And the results that I mentioned are internal, but they are directly aligned with some of the achievements of the city too. So the ACEEE, the American Council for Energy Efficient Economy, a leading think tank in energy efficiency, ranked DC as the third most efficient city. DCSEU has been named as a best practice for 2 years now, and also has shown the most improvements. Like I mentioned earlier, of the largest affordable solar program, because if you know how solar is being financed, it pretty much ignores anyone who either doesn't have the cash to pay for it upfront or doesn't have a decent credit record to enter into PPA. We helped correct that imbalance. We were involved in subsidizing the first passive house, multifamily house in the US, and that's a big achievement. We've done partnerships with the affordable housing agencies of DC, because anyone who lives here knows how expensive housing is and is getting, and whatever we can do to reduce the burden of utilities on low-income housing helps sustain those economically mixed communities around the city. And we have spent, over the 4 years of operation, about $19 million with local businesses exclusively. So what does the future look like? We don't know, and at no point have we said that our job is done. This was just the beginning. We came up with this idea. In fact, the founder of VEIC was the one who planted the seed of, and Blair Hamilton passed away a few years ago, but it was from a trip done by the council here in DC to Vermont to see how we do business in Vermont, that the vision was inspired in DC. So we don't know what it looked like, but I'll make an attempt. It could directly look at the efficiency of the future. So we've been great at replacing old equipment, retrofits, etc. But we could be looking at behavioral response. We could be looking at building automation, things we don't look at right now. Create new models like efficiency as a service. We could be looking at energy storage, make the city more resilient. I mean, isn't it a shame that the White House has no electricity when a transformer breaks down in Maryland? I mean, we are talking about the most powerful piece of real estate in the world. Doesn't get electricity when the transformer breaks down. So storage solutions can really help create this sort of resiliency. Innovative financing strategies, we've just begun. One of the things I launched recently was the equivalent of a lending tree model here in DC, where what I'm doing is aggregating projects mostly from the underserved markets and presenting them to financing partners in a way that reduces the business development that it takes for them to finance these small businesses, because that's number one barrier for them to actually lend to those institutions, is the brain damage of going through all of that for these smaller projects. So this aggregation, it's just the first step, but this could lead into credit enhancement strategies, energy savings guarantees that really helps demonstrate the value of energy efficiency to create a more financially viable business. A low-income renewable energy fund, that's something we're in the process of setting up. And finally, intersections with transportation, waste, and water sectors. We work with these agencies on an independent basis, but there's many ways we can actually have programs that unlock the potential of efficiency in these sectors and create a more vibrant sector for DC as a whole. So that's my presentation on DCSEU. But before I leave, the takeaway that I hope to, I guess, leave with you all is imagine how such a concept could work in your city. This works in DC, and it can work better, but there are ways it can be different in your city. If your city is based in a rural area like Vermont is, we've proven it on the ground in Vermont as well. If it's industrial like Ohio, it works there as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts now, later, shoot me an email, whatever, about how you think this could be applied in a different context. And I'm sure we can figure a way out. That's it. Thank you.